Welcome back to the garage here at Basin Motorsports. I'm Canaan. Today I'm going to show you how I'm going to wrap these Porsche 944 dash pieces in purple carbon fiber from Venom Carbon. Now here's a look at the carbon fiber that I will be using. So it's in a roll. Now this is going to be a 52-inch piece rolled up in there. So I have plenty of material here, but you can kind of see, hard to tell in this lighting, but this is a nice deep purple that I'm going to be using. Now here are the three pieces I'm going to be covering in this video. This goes right behind the steering wheel. This is kind of the column cover, if you will. And you've got pieces that go on either side of the steering wheel. You have one that has the ignition key cut out there. So it's got a little bit of an indentation there I'll have to start with and then go out. I need to take a switch out. And then this one is the opposite side where it has the headlights. And then again, it has a switch in it that I need to take out. And it has a grill for the vent. So I'll have to cover this all up, which is going to be a challenge. And this is going to be something that's going to be very interesting to do. In order to start this process, I need to sand each of these pieces after removing the switches with 60 or 80 grit sandpaper. And then on this piece alone, it has a rubber backed piece that is encapsulated in here. So I'm just going to cover it in blue painter's tape. That way the resin won't stick to it. And then I can sand everything there. Again, sand, take that out. And the last piece, again, take the switch out, get everything sanded so the epoxy has a great surface to bond to, and then we'll get on to the next step. Okay, so here's a look at the dash finishers and the column pieces for the Porsche 944. So these are just sanded with 80 grit sandpaper. You can see it's kind of a dull part now. I did my best to give it a hatching on it so you can kind of see it. And now I just need to clean with some isopropyl alcohol, and then I can get these started with some resin and hardener. And that way they'll sit for a few hours till it's tacky, and then I can start laying the carbon fiber pieces down. All right, so here are your three dash pieces. Now this is covered in the Venom Carbon resin and hardener. Now this is 2 parts resin to 1 part hardener, and this is done by volume. Now from here, we're just gonna let this dry. We'll let it cure for about 3 hours or so. I'll come and check it. But the point is I want it to cure enough that it's tacky or just slightly sticky, but the resin does not come off my finger. It's bonded to the plastic. Now I've added some black pigment in there so that it will block out any of the color of the plastic. It's already black, but we'll do it anyway. And that way we just need to let this sit for about 3 hours, somewhere in there, and then we'll start laying down the purple carbon fiber. All right, so I came in at 2 hours just to double check, and the resin, by golly, it was almost dry. So it is now, it's about 82 degrees in here, and it's coming down. It's about 6 p.m. and no humidity. So everything is now tacked down. With this, you need to pat it down. That's one thing I learned. On vinyl, you cannot, in vinyl, you kind of wipe it on or kind of massage it back and forth. With this stuff, you need to put it down and pat it on to make sure it's stuck. So here's your column cover. That's all the way on. This is nice and stuck. You have one of the pieces here. You can see the contour. And as it kind of folds down in there, I open this up a little bit for recess and then pat it in. So you can kind of see how the cloth flows, I guess you'd say. Changes shape, changes texture as it flows around things, but we'll let this set up and then I will trim all those other pieces off. And here's a difference I made. So that has a depression in it going down into the piece. This is the second one I did. First one I thought I'd be sneaky sneakerton and double layer it, and then I was going to cut basically a ring around so that I could make sure it fit well. Well, that was a mistake because this stuff was so cured that basically that first layer bonded on so well, and then I can't get this to bond on now. So if I was going to have to do it, if I was going to be keeping this piece, this would be a complete start over. You'd have to lose the carbon, which is not exactly a cheap mistake, and then you'd bond that on there. So I will try to do what I can with this to get it to bond on there with the clear coat resin when I go to the next layer. But that's a sucky mistake to learn from. But hey, that's what practice is for. Learn from your mistakes. All right, so here's our other pieces, our dash pieces. So you have a console cover or the column cover, and then 2 side pieces. Feel like I'm struggling a little bit with it. I've got some dull scissors that I had to switch out, and they were really just kind of doing a terrible job cutting that carbon fiber. So that may be a lesson learned that good scissors is definitely needed. But you can start to see some finished product. I'm going to now lay down the resin over the top, kind of lock it in, but it's adhered very well. Now I just need to work on the fine details, and this is the one I was trying to double layer. We'll see how it comes out. It's looking pretty terrible, but we'll see how it goes, and maybe the way not to do it, but at least I'll know at the end of the story. All right, so here is the second layer of resin going on our dash pieces for the Porsche 944. So this one here is, I think this is the ignition switch if I remember right. So you can kind of see it's there. I chose to open up these holes down here in the bottom, right there. And then you've got the ignition switch open and then just everything there. So it's starting to see it's glossy. This will set up overnight now because it's getting late evening. And then we'll come in and do those. Second piece there. Now you notice I've got a little bit of an adhesion problem right there where it didn't stick very well. So I'll have to do what I can to get that folded down and stuck back on there. But sometimes you're going to have a failure when you're practicing. And the last piece there is the other side with the headlight switch. Nice and glossy. Everything's there. All the way done. So tomorrow I will work on these, getting the third and fourth layers of resin on, and then we'll let them cure for a good 24 hours, maybe 48, depending on what it is. And then we'll start cleaning up the edges, opening up holes, and get everything back to right as if it were going to be installed. All right, so we've let the finishers dry. Now these are overnight, so they're pretty much cured. I won't say fully, but they're pretty darn close. So now what you see is you've got all these little edges on here, these little daggers. So you can just take some side cutters, something similar to this, and cut them off, or you can use some sandpaper to grind any areas. So with this, I'm just going to go through and get rid of all these sharp edges. And you can use a Dremel if you want to. You can use some side cutters, whatever it takes, but really pretty much anything that's not on the part itself, you can just take off. There's no use in putting more resin on something that's not needed. So there you go. There's some of the finish. And then I will go through and sand this surface down again, trying to get some of these defects off, any of these bubbles in the pieces, and then get it back to a good rough texture before I add layers 3 and 4. But just going to kind of start getting it into its rough shape. All right, so here is round 3 of our dash pieces. So now these have been cut. You notice the openings here are cut open in one finisher. So you have your steering or your, I guess, key cylinder opening that I've cut open and sanded open. You now have these square pieces here, these rectangles, I guess, and then the holes on the end. Just give you a good look here. This is a third round of resin I'll put on. This will cure overnight. There is your column finisher. All the way around, cut, sanded, and then a third round of layer of resin. And here is your other side. Now this is the side that goes with the light switch that I have not cut out in that big opening there. And then you also notice kind of these indentions down here. All of those need to be cut open. So now I've done, if you noticed on one, I did all of the cutouts here on this one, and on this one I've done none of the cutouts. So what I want to do is understand what is the difference between if you cut, you put on resin like a couple layers so it's stable, the carbon's stable, and you cut it out and try to work in mid-process, or if you leave it all to the end, what is better? What gives a better finish? What is the better process, I guess you would say? What's more efficient? Less time to get done, and that's what I want to know. I'm thinking it might be the one over here on the left that is uncut open, but we won't know till the end. But this is an experiment, and that's where we're going to leave it. We'll see you tomorrow, and we'll go into round 4. All right, so here's going to be the finished product of all the pieces now that I've gone through sanded and clear coat. So let's go through each piece just to kind of show you what I've done. So this is the steering column cover. You notice there's some decent scratches in there still prior to the clear coat. So with this, I just did 800 grit sanding just to see how much clear coat will hide. And the truth is, really not much. Now, thankfully, this goes behind the steering wheel, so you won't see much of this. But I can tell you, this needs more sanding just to get a little bit better. So here is going to be our ignition cylinder. You can see it's all the way done around. And you have your defroster switch in there. Now those are cut open and then hand filed with a small file just to make fit. Everything good there. And then you have your light switch. So again, you have your fog light switch, hand sanded with the openings. I did break this bottom piece right there. Just a little too aggressive with the grabbing of it early on, but I broke it. And then everything else I just kind of cut open and left. Didn't do much with. Had a little bit of resin buildup there, which I've covered in the video that says 10 mistakes to avoid. That's in there, as that the resin is quite runny. But otherwise, not too bad. So there you have it. There's the first set I've done of carbon fiber. Of course, a lot of stuff you learn just by touching and doing. A lot of mistakes in there. I've made the list of the 10 mistakes to avoid, but I've got a couple other ones that I have a mental note on don't do too many pieces at once if they're going to have connecting shapes, I guess you'd say, with the switch blanks. And then don't do the pattern. Got to watch the pattern of everything that matches. If you want it to match itself, well, then you need to take a lot of care in making sure everything is laid down correctly the first time before you start adding all our resin in. So with this, these parts are done. The clear coat now just needs to cure for probably a good 24, 48 hours. And then I'm done with these. I'm going to move on to another set in a different color, but a lot to learn here. Now, all the materials I've used, I will have links in the description down to below. You can go over to Venom Carbon to find the purple carbon. They also have the resin set there, and they're working on some more items with it. Now, I'm going to jump over to probably either their blue or their red next. I haven't decided which one yet, but if you like one over the other, just let me know in the comments. Otherwise, all the materials I've used, either it's from Venom Carbon or just some standard stuff, you can find down in the links in the description. And if you want to get yourself some and try this, I would highly recommend it. It's a challenge, but it's probably something that you're going to enjoy. That's it for this time. Thanks for stopping by Basin Motorsports. Canaan is out.